of several episodes of my interview with Nathan Vegdahl, an inspiring animator and one of the lead artists on Big Bug Bunny. I begin by asking Nathan how he got his start, and how he balances his creativity with his technical ability.
I did do art as a child. I've been drawing for pretty much as long as I can remember, and despite that I'm still not very good at it. And I've also been very much into science and technology, also since a very young age. It was never an either-or sort of thing for me. It was always very natural for me to just be interested in both, and to do both. So in addition to having drawn for as long as I can remember, I've also been doing some form of programming since I was about 7 years old. And I've always been fascinated by science and physics and, read about that kind of stuff. I don't know if you're familiar with HyperCard, but it was a fun little application for the Mac, which I guess in some ways it's sort of similar to like PowerPoint now, but it was easily abusable for things other than presentations. So I actually ended up making a couple of kind of Monkey Island style games, like adventure games with a point and click, and in HyperCard. There wasn't any like significant animation, but the whole like collecting items and things like that worked. And that was, I did art on the computer to do the backgrounds and stuff like that. But I don't know, I guess I never really noticed the transition. It did just seem kind of like another tool to me, but at the same time it seemed like a very powerful tool. I was always into special effects. I watched Star Wars makings of probably more than I watched the movies themselves, which is saying a lot because I watched Star Wars a lot over and over and over again. And I really started getting interested in computer animation when I started seeing stuff from Jurassic Park. That was just like this moment of like, whoa, they can do that with computers? And so I was like, well, I was enamored right then, and I just had to go and do that stuff. So I started looking at all kinds of things and picking up books and trying out different softwares. And it was actually not too long after that. Let's see. I guess actually it was a while. But eventually I found Blender. I actually started getting into computer graphics from the technical side instead of the art side. Like the first time that I really got into computer graphics was through games, I guess. And I had these dreams of kind of making my own games, my own 3D games. And so I read lots and lots of stuff on 3D rendering and all like 3D engines and things like that. And I started like programming stuff for that, trying to build my own 3D engines. I had some limited success, which in retrospect is at least mildly impressive because I was like in early middle school at the time. But they were still incredibly crappy, and like, oh boy, I made a triangle that you can sort of zoom in and out from, and nothing ever came of it. But that kind of started my lifelong love of 3D rendering. So I guess I came into it kind of from the 3D rendering standpoint, and I guess I realized that non-real-time graphics was a lot more interesting, especially at the time, because the difference between real-time and non-real-time at that time was huge in terms of the level of quality you can achieve with it and the kind of cool effects you can do with it. So I kind of jumped ship from real-time graphics and got on board with non-real-time graphics, and I was looking for something that I could do rendering stuff with. I certainly didn't have the expertise at the time to write a 3D renderer of my own, even if I thought I did. So I eventually stumbled across Pavre, I think, sometime during middle school, and was messing around with that a whole bunch. But it was very limited because it was just text. Like, there's no GUI front ends so that I could actually model things with, and so it was all ooh, I made a sphere and I can apply a bump map and I can, place a light source with the coordinates. I mean, it was all just typing, like just text, creating a text file that described the scene. I mean, that was fairly natural for me to do because of my programming background, but at the same time, there's no way, no matter how strong your programming background is, that you can actually do anything really artistic that way, because you can't, I mean, it's just too much guessing and checking. Like typing in coordinates and rendering, especially with the ray tracer on computers at that time, it would take, a good like 15 minutes to render even just like a very simple scene. So it really wasn't practical. And so I found myself very frustrated, wanting to do things more along the lines of Jurassic Park, which certainly I didn't have the artistic skills to do at the time. But I, of course, assumed that I did. And so I wanted something that would allow me to actually interact with 3D. So I started looking for a 3D application. And, I looked at all of the commercial software, and at the time it was just, I mean, when you're like in late middle school, early high school, like that's just prohibitive. Like, oh my god, it's like $150 like for the cheapest things, and it's like, that's a fortune, I can't afford that. And so I never really picked any of that stuff up. Piracy did not occur to me at the time as it did to a lot of people. So I stumbled across Blender sometime early high school, and I was like, holy crap, it's a free 3D software. And it had just been released like maybe online maybe like 2-3 months before I found it, and so it was exciting and new. And I guess the computer definitely felt like a very different kind of tool, but it did still just feel like a tool. And I'd been using computers since a very, very young age, so it was pretty natural to me. I mean, it was a little awkward to try and accomplish things in it, especially at first, but it seemed like another way to create cool images, and in a lot of ways it seemed like the most promising way. It's the sort of thing like with both claymation and hand-drawn animation, like the first thing that anyone ever does with it is morphing. Like you have, like, clay, it's so moldable, you put a kid in front of or if you give a kid some clay and a stop-motion camera, and inevitably they're going to do things where, like, this person-shaped thing suddenly morphs into a dragon, and now it's like a sphere and it rolls away, and that splits into 2 balls and rolls around. I mean, that's just what you do because it's fun. It's like, it's a medium that doesn't have limitations, and it's just sort of naturally what you gravitate towards. And my first stuff doing hand-drawn animation was totally the same way. Yeah, I took an animation class from Tony White, and a hand-drawn animation class from Tony White, and that was a really huge eye-opener for me, just in terms of animation technique. He was an awesome instructor, very, very supportive and patient, and kind of, he definitely pushed you, but also can recognize your own pace and, let you work at kind of your own pace. So that was really, really informative to me, just in terms of really, I guess, understanding kind of the core principles of animation. I don't mean things like squash and stretch and, overlapping action, like the 12 principles. I mean, like, it's very easy to just kind of start setting keyframes, and you get sort of these, like, characters that just float and, kind of do their actions, and it's very, and taking and I think part of the reason for that is because people have a big sense of freedom with computer animation, which is great, and it obviously is incredibly useful to have the kind of flexibility to be able to continue to refine your stuff in a pretty straightforward manner. But I guess really what the 2D animation classes really taught me was just in terms of animation planning. Because with hand-drawn animation, to do really good animation, you have to plan it out. You can't just kind of go in and just start drawing. You have to think about it and really analyze the motion and the character ahead of time and really plan it out step by step. And taking that and applying it to, like, after I took the hand-drawn animation class, my 3D animation improved markedly, just obviously and instantaneously. It was just like, I took this 2D animation class and suddenly my 3D animation is just like 3 times as good. And I think a lot of that was just because I started getting in the habit of really planning out animations and thinking about the problem before doing it, instead of just jumping in right away.